Back is still Daybreak Africa, reaching you from the studios here in the city, of course. I'm Ezekiel. Okay, this morning we'll be talking on the economic crisis in Nigeria, analyzing the steps taken by the government to cushion the effects on the citizens. And with us in the house is a political analyst, the person of Akinsile, Akinniran. Welcome on Daybreak Africa.
Good morning.
A very good morning to
and
you.
Happy New Week.
We should do the very best. Now, straight to the discussion of the day. Talking about Nigerian situation, especially our economic situation, we have hikes in price of commodities in the market, hyperinflation hitting us. We also have the soaring height of the unemployment rate. As at this moment, all these things do not sound good for us as a nation. You, as a person that believes Nigeria, always believes in Nigeria, what is your take on this situation at this moment?
Thank you very much. I will still say good morning to the viewers at home, and I wish all of us Happy New Week. We have said it well. Yes, we love Nigeria. But as of today, Nigeria is not smiling at anybody, both the rich and the poor. We need to first of all identify where has the problem come from. What is the major reason behind our predicaments? Two things are involved. One, policy of the government is the fundamental. The number two, as Nigerian citizens, what are we doing to help our situation? Simple. And on that note, the present economic situation we find ourselves is not friendly, not to the rich and not to the poor, but the poor at the receiving end. And why? This present, okay, let me quickly say something. You said hyperinflation. God forbid, we are yet to get there, but we are very close. But I pray we not get to that level. Before you can say hyperinflation, that means we must have all agreed that Nigeria is experiencing what is called inflation. In the simplest term, what is inflation? It's just general increase in commodities, general increase in the price of all commodities, and less purchasing power. And when we experience this, what is the cause? Simple. Our government has failed to put up the right policies that can aggravate, that can arrest this situation in Nigeria. And whose table will all these things stopped? At the table of the president. Because if he said he's going to come up with best economic hands, today, I don't know, 8 months over in office, we are yet to see, not only to see, we are able to see this, the other side. Let me inform you, in the last 17 years, 2023 was the highest period we have inflation at a rate of 25%. Before you can get to hyperinflation, that means the price of commodities must have been increasing at least 50% at interval. But we have, thank God, we have 25%. And I will not be surprised if today is 28 or 30 or 35.
You saw for 29.
That's at today. So what we are now saying is this: how are we going to work out things in our favor? Or what is the government doing presently to arrest the situation? And I can tell you, from what I heard from the president of recent, if it is true anyway, that he is aware of the hardship Nigerians are passing through, and there's little or nothing we can do to it. That shows the kind of heart he has. If your citizens are dying on a daily basis, going begging, families can no longer eat 2 meals a day, and it's not limited to certain parts of Nigeria. It cut across. The Hausas are saying the same. The Igbos are not left out. The Yorubas, your kinsmen, are even crying more. What are you now saying? And I'm baffled and I'm disturbed that we can find ourselves in this shoe. And the only thing I think we can do now, thank God we have identified we have problem, and the problem is inflation. The next thing we can take off is how do we get out of this mess? And our policymakers, our people at the helms of affairs, they just told us they have nothing to do. They are helpless in arresting the matter. Then what are we now saying? I pray we don't have more japa in Nigeria anywhere from now.
Talking about policies, the Financial Times of London described policies made by Tinubu-led administration as flawed, and the IMF doubted Nigerian quest for betterment considering our policies. Now, the president himself has been one that's actually tends to really take a pride in his ability to make reforms and bring out policies. And he said he supposedly deserved a Guinness Book of, his name to be written in the Guinness Book of Record for being a president actually had to make reforms from day one in the office, talking about his inauguration speech and then the removal of subsidy. Now, at this point, I think just afterwards, within 30 days, we went into the floating of the Naira and all that. Now, I tend to wonder, is the issue with the policies or the issue is with the lack of intelligence, or are we just so crumbled that even good policies cannot work for us anymore?
I think, let me start from the last point you raised. Policies can still work for Nigeria, only if it is positive. And don't forget, Nigeria is a special country. That you apply the method in UK or US or in the advanced world does not mean it's going to work in Nigeria. Why? In those countries, they have ways of combating corruption. You cannot even corrupt because the system is readily there to arrest such. But in Nigeria, it is free for all. Anybody can corrupt, anybody can do anything. So that does not mean that because they apply the policy in advanced country, it's going to work in Nigeria. Let us put that one aside. Then number two, that things cannot work in Nigeria is far from truth. It's only that the people at the helms of affairs are not ready to do the needful. Take for instance, when you have economic problem, first of all, you come up with economic team. Let me just shock you. In 1995, we had similar case. Guess what? Within the shortest period, the then administrator in Nigeria, they came together, they come up with a policy, and the institution was arrested to the extent that it reduced from 25% to 6.6%, all in a year. In this same Nigeria, we are military head, not even civilian president then. What are we now saying? When you have good heads at the helms of affairs, you don't find it easy, and we don't find it difficult to do the needful. Today, we are being headed with a Miloka, as if everything will be well with Nigerians. But lo and behold, we are now gnashing our teeth in tears, in anguish, in all sorts of things. And why are we doing this? Because we have the wrong person at the head. If he has come up with the expectation Nigeria had for him when they voted for him, though the vote is questionable to me, when you have 8 million out of 200 million Nigerians, does that justify you are the best? The answer should be no. As of today, we have 90 million voters in Nigeria. Only 8 million decided our vote, decided our vote for us. Does that commensurate? What is the percentage of 8 million to 90 million? Not up to 10% of voters. And they determine the fate of Nigerians today. And that's where we are today. But put that aside. If this man means business, there are ways to handle the present situation. 3 things are involved: monetary policy, fiscal policy, and foreign exchange. If you can manage these 3 very well, I can tell you in another 3 months we'll forget all these things.
From what you're saying, I really want to ask the question: are you trying to say he's currently out of solutions? Are you trying to say
I don't want to say it's bereft of ideas. We are presently, I want to assume that the present administration is bereft of ideas of how to manage our resources, of how to solve our problems. We have issues, and everybody is crying. I remember last few weeks ago when the wife, Remi Tinubu, went to visit Emir of Kano. You know what he told him? He said, "I am sending to your husband. Tell him that Nigerians are suffering." And what has he done? Nobody can tell me he's not aware in Nigeria that Nigerians are suffering. Well, even the rich are crying.
He made mention of taking baby steps and baby steps.
What is the meaning of baby steps?
At the,
Can you tell me the meaning of baby step?
Well,
what is the meaning?
It's more like a starting point, and at every starting point there could be difficulties and challenges. But as time goes on, probably the entire efficiency of his policies will actually come to play out. That we see.
Let me take you through the memory lane. In 1921, Germany had what we call hyperinflation, but in 2 years it was arrested. But before it was arrested, that was what led to the coming up of Adolf Hitler to ensure that this thing never continued. In Zimbabwe, 2008, they had similar case. It took them 9 years before they survived it, before they could get out of what we call hyperinflation. As of today, Venezuela started in 2016. As of today, they are yet to get out of it. And don't forget, hyperinflation will not come overnight. Something will bring it. There must have been certain increments on daily basis, on weekly basis, and at a time it will get to hyperinflation, which means within 24 hours there will be 100% or 50% increment on goods and services rendered in the society. Today, you may hear in the morning that maybe cement is 7,000, but evening 7,500 is not up to 50%. Don't forget. So that's what we are experiencing now. Yesterday I wanted to buy a bottle of Coke. The one I bought in the morning was 250 naira. By the time I go to the in the afternoon, they say, oh, no, they cannot sell for me. They say 300. That's okay, no problem. But later I want to go and buy for my wife. They say 350. All in a day. 250, 300, 350. We are getting to hyperinflation very, very closely to us. But there are still ways we can arrest it. Only if our government can be proactive. This is also, so before you can say you are experiencing hyperinflation, it must have started with high inflation. Any good and services that's above 5% increment at a certain period is regarded as high inflation.
Now, we're looking at the situation of the cash flow thing. On paper, it sounds a very good one. Now, I want to ask a question. The question goes like, looking at it as a thing, some countries, as you mentioned earlier, have used that and it has worked for them. You also made mention that Nigeria's cases is very peculiar. It's a
very peculiar.
Now, for such kind of strategy, such kind of plan to work in the country, what are those things that are supposed to be on ground for that kind of policy to work?
Very simple. There must be purpose of unity. In every situation like this, government must be able to work with the citizens. And we have 2 or 3 types of citizens in the past, even till now. We have the high class, we have the middle class, and we have the low class. As of today, all of us will agree with me that over 70% of Nigerians are in the low class. While about, let me say, out of 70, let's say 20% are the middle class. Then let us assume, which is not true that anyway, let's say 10% of Nigerians are the high class. Meet with the 3 of them. Let the high class try to cushion the effect of present hardship by giving people some, like we did during ELSAS. Some philanthropists came out dashing, donating money to some individuals. Some people will buy food, some people will buy this. And don't forget today, our problem is not the availability of the food or commodities. It is not. We have them. It's only that the price are higher. And that is why we can limit ourselves to a scope of economics which state it is purely inflation. We are not experiencing famine. We are not experiencing any shortcomings, but general increase in the price of commodities and services. So therefore, it is easy to conclude that Nigeria is experiencing what is called high inflation. And the only way that the rich among us, let them come to the aid of the poor. The government should encourage them to do so. Take for instance, if Dangote, a case study, is rich, can you give 20 states can you give some individuals some money? Then we reduce your tax maybe for a year or 2. That will serve as motivation for Dangote. And because Dangote will help those individuals because of what he has. And that availability of what do we call it, help is going to give to those people. We get, at least we save them for a certain period. That is by example. That's one. Number 2, government also must make what do you call it, borrowing easier, because when you borrow and you're able to produce with whatever you borrow with, we really encourage us to do more. Take for instance, if the interest rate is 25%, talk to the bank, make it 15%, so that people can borrow money. When you borrow money, you know you are paying lesser as interest. Then you can easily begin to produce with what you have. Don't forget today that why we are no longer producing in Nigeria is because people are now saving their money to survive, to feed. Those that are into production have stopped. Managing themselves, spend the time in Nigeria, we will get better. And those who have savings, they have not been going to the savings to take and use it to eat, not to produce, to eat. So first of all, and it's like the other time he said they should bring out food from the food reserve of the country. Well, I've never heard of that in the last 10 years that Nigeria has a food reserve. And don't forget why it is working in other countries. Like I've said here some time ago, I said I've been to Qatar. In Qatar, the government has regularized everything. We have so many markets, but among these markets we have two: Safari market and hypermarket. The hyper, whatever you are going to buy in Safari or you go to buy in hypermarket, there can only be slightest difference or same price. There's no way you can change it. And why? Because government has regulated it. Today, in go to Ondo here, they may be selling Gari for 1,200. Go to Oshun, you will see same Gari for 700. Why? Because there was no price control. And there's no way to ensure the price control works. There's no way. So these are the things government must do to cushion the effect of this hardship. I am afraid, where I'm shouting at the top of my voice now, is that I see it coming. That if necessary action is not taken now, I am afraid in another 4 or 5 months, Nigeria will just be in hyperinflation.
Now, on that note, if you ask most Nigerians on the street now that what is the problem, most people will tell you the situation where we focus all our energy on one source of income into our economy, not diversifying into other sector, is one of our issues that we've been talking about for a very long time. But outside that, outside not diversifying into other sectors, the government of the day has promised a lot. Last time you came here, we said on paper, a lot of things looks very beautiful. A lot of plans look very beautiful, but you made mention of implementation has always been a problem carrying it out. Now, as at this moment, both bringing the plan to realization and what is happening at this moment, do you even think the government of the day knows what they are doing, especially when the president said he feels the pain of the masses, but there's possibly like nothing he can do about it? As of this moment, this is not an encouraging statement from the president, because each time we will look into the television, we want to hear something positive from them. But for a president of Nigeria, as at this moment, say there is possibly nothing he can do about the situation, do you even think they know what they are doing?
Quite unfortunate that we find ourselves in this show, but I believe we will get there one day. To me, I am afraid, and you know why I'm afraid? NSAS is still fresh in my memory. The Nigeria we know has never got to this stage when NSAS started. Today, we are like better. I mean, this NSAS period was better than this period, and no hungry man is an angry man. Today, average Nigerian is hungry, and when you see an angry man in action, I am afraid whether any soldier can stand it. And don't forget that this drum is coming from north, from the south, from the central. If our government is very proactive now, this is the time for them to take a bold step so that Nigeria can be relieved. To me, I have not seen anything good in this present government. I'm sorry to say this, because if my president can face me and said, I know you are suffering, but I cannot solve your problem. Just like a father telling a toddler, my son or my daughter, I know you are hungry, but I cannot help you. What is the fail? How do you expect that toddler to fail? Nigerians are toddler now. Baba Tinubu is our father. Telling us that I cannot help our situation is giving up a kind of hopeless living. That to die is better for us to live. And if you see such a person, if you want to die, it's okay. If I want to die, I must not die alone. I must go with some people. So many ideas we come. But to me, like I said, the present Nigerian situation is not as bad as we painted it. Only if our government can be proactive. Like I said the other time, I want to be very sorry for saying this. Our workers are now working on how to increase the minimum wage. And you know that anytime, go and study it, anywhere in the world, when there's wage increment, there must be inflation. And don't forget, inflation is a very good policy in government, in any government of the nation, of the world. Inflation is allowed, but inflation must always be between 1 to 2%. Unlike Nigerian situation now, 5% increment at every level, at every stage of life. Not only that, our present government is encouraging the inflation. Don't forget, our last budget was around 27 trillion, and we are going to borrow about 9 trillion to service it. And we want to help a nation. You reduce your borrowing policy. Today we are still going to borrow more. Apart from that, and what are we borrowing this money for? To buy cars, not to help in infrastructure, not to do anything, but to do all the unnecessary frivolities.
Now, if we want to look at the whole situation on ground, there are a lot of places we need to look at. But now, the government of the day, as at this moment, as they came into it, we see a lot of taxation coming in, high taxation on the poor masses, I must say. Removal of fuel subsidy, which was the first one. Most people were expecting a lot of things to come in for cushioning the effect on the poor masses. We've not seen that materialize to this extent. Now, nobody's really talking about an in-depth, a very deep cut into the court of governance. Why is that so? Because I believe they say charity begins at home. And if we want to really look at situation, the exuberant fee going into governance, it should be a thing for us to talk about. It should be a thing for us to focus on. And we are also seeing a lot of things. The EFCC anti-graft agencies come and say, okay, we've been able to apprehend this person, we'll be able to retrieve this. But we are not seeing these things manifest in the welfare of the country and the governance of the country. What's your take on that?
You have put so many things together, but let me just be taking them one after the other as I remember. Let me start from the EFCC of everything. Do you know, are you aware that the Central Bank of Nigeria came up to say they have not seen any money from EFCC in the last 5 years? And they said they have collected money. How will you collect the money and the Central Bank will not be aware of it? That's by the way. Let's go to the issue of fuel subsidy. When he said he's going to remove subsidy, I laughed. I know it will end this way. The whole problem Nigerians are having today is because of the removal of fuel subsidy, and I will tell you why. He removes fuel subsidy. He started giving it to the states and federal government, to the federation accounts. They were using the money, just like robbing Paul to pay Peter. What Nigerians are enjoying, you took it from them. You gave it to the government again. The government is now using the money to do as they like. So it's as good as making the rich to be richer and making the poor to be poorer. The Nigerians who took this first subsidy from are now suffering. They can no longer, and don't forget, maybe the first subsidy was removed, something happened. Increment in all prices of things. Most affected was the transportation section. And don't forget, every food we have in Nigeria must be transported.
Of course.
That was the genesis. And as at that August, just a month after he came to power, we had 25% inflation rate in Nigeria. As if he has answered within a few months. Today, is within 8 months or 9 months thereabout, we are having 29 to 30% inflation rate, and it's going. And this man is telling me he meant well for Nigeria. If you mean well for us, we must be able to see it in a practical experience. We must see it on ground that yes, you are working. Now let us ask ourselves, what good has this administration brought to Nigerians? You mentioned tax. Very good. The way he has been collecting tax is very good. But go and ask how tax is being collected. You don't collect tax from the poor because they cannot afford it. You collect tax from the rich. That's supposed to, that's how it's being operated everywhere in the world. But in Nigeria today, if the least paid is being taxed, and let's take for instance the least paid Nigerian by the standard for Nigerian worker is 30,000. You will still pay tax on the 30,000. Do you know that the 30,000 it will take you 3 months before you can buy a bag of rice from your salary if you are not doing any other thing with it? As of today, they sell a bag of rice for 70,000. We have that of 80,000 anyway. That's a foreign rice. But local rice is 70,000. I bought yesterday. So, a minimum wage of 30,000 naira, how many months will you save without taking a kobo from the salary before you can buy a bag of rice? And don't forget, an average Nigerian who is working should be able to have himself, the wife, and at least 1 child. Or maybe 3, 5. How do you take care of this if you still save the only salary you want to get for 3 months before you can buy a bag of rice that can only last you for 1 month, and you say you are helping us. The present administration is not masses friendly. That's my number one factor I want to tell the whole world. Number two, if truly you have these masses as your friends, as your brothers, and you want to help the association, just mention one thing you have done to cushion the effect of poverty in their life. This is number two. Number three, I'm sorry to say this, in Nigeria today we have some regions that are very, very volatile, that are very, very aggressive. We call them Ishiokoku. They are two. The Yorubas don't want to die, but there are some tribes they are ready to die if it happens now. If these tribes are crying now, by the time you see their negative side, I am afraid if the government of the day will be able to withstand it. But before it gets to that stage, that's why we are crying now. We are shouting, we are begging. Someone like us, I can do without food for 2-3 days, but some people cannot do for a day. Even I can live on water for 3 days as I am, but not everybody, and I can't expect my child to do the same. I can starve myself for me to take care of my kids, but not every home will be able to do that. And we are not begging Baba Ahmed Bola Tinubu to help Nigeria, so that it will not degenerate to what we don't want. He should do something now. One, I said, in government policy, if you want to help your economy, there are 3 things you need to do. I said your monetary policy, your fiscal policy, and stabilization of foreign exchange. Last week we had solar was 1.5 to 1.6 to 1.7 to 1.8, and Saturday maybe $2,000. So what is government doing to stabilize the foreign exchange? If you want to stabilize foreign exchange, you shouldn't have allowed it to get to this level.
But if we look at the floating of the cash, the IMF also advised that it should be done. But now most people are really criticizing the present administration that they didn't really look inward to know if it was going to be a possibility on their own country, in their own country. Now we understand that the IMF is a monetary body that understands the economy, and they did advise. But now it's backfiring. The same IMF now is also saying negative things about Nigeria and the present government. What is really going on in that respect?
Let me quickly shock you for that. This same IMF advised Venezuela, and since 8 years ago now they have been in the crisis. They have not been able to provide solution. And like I said earlier, that Nigeria is a peculiar country. You can't compare what is you suggest to some other countries that is work in Nigeria. No, anybody can advise. In 1995, it was this same IMF that advised Nigeria, and we got ourselves in 25% inflation rate. Before they quickly come to no, this will not work, and they quickly come up with their Nigerian style of doing things. And within 3 months, it came back from 25 to 6.6%. And I will still say this: if the present government want to help the situation of things, it is very easy. We only have one solution to it. Despite the fact that we are lying, I want to say, quote me, that we are lying that there is fuel subsidy that we removed. Not lie. As at last week, I was told, and I heard and I read, that the landing cost of fuel is already 1,000 naira. Landing cost. And we are still sold, they still sold it for us for 650. So by implication, government have subsidized 350 naira. So what are we now saying? And I now ask that what is the cost of this cost of landing? They say it's because of exchange rate. This is number 2 problem. First problem, we have been paying subsidy back. 2, the cost of it was the exchange rate that has gone up. And what was the reason for the exchange rate? As at the time this government was coming on board, exchange rate was 700 naira. I stand to be corrected. As at the time this government was coming on board, fuel was 185. As at this time this government was coming on board, rice was so expensive at 35,000 naira. Very expensive. We were shouting that it's so expensive to buy rice for 35,000. Today, mention one thing that has come down in price since this government has come on board. The question is, what was the reason? Fuel subsidy removal. If you want Nigeria to be better again, first of all, return the fuel subsidy. I am saying this, anybody can quote me. If you return the fuel subsidy, attack the perpetrator, the evildoers that are benefiting from our fuel subsidy. Deal with them. We have them, we know them. What really happened with, first of all, let me just tell you in my own layman way, is that if 1,000 metric tons of fuel is taken abroad, they will write that 10,000 had gone abroad. So as we are gaining our 1,000, they are having 9,000 metric tons in their own favor. That's what was happening. So if this one can be taken care of, this money you are giving to the state and the federation will go back to the masses. So they don't need to be a government worker before they enjoy the government. As of today, nobody is enjoying the government. Nothing. Everything you do, you strive, you work hard to get it. Nothing government is given to anybody in Nigeria again. And I was even surprised that last week I heard that they are going to remove subsidy on the electricity again. If they are removing subsidy on everything, what are you giving them back? Is everybody working with the government? Is everybody part of the government that will benefit? They said they are paying them 35,000 naira palliative. What can 35,000 naira do now? I have said this 6 months ago that the 35,000 they said they are adding, that is not commensurating with the expenses on ground.
Ajay came out to say they only receive for 1 month.
Yes, they only receive for 1 month.
Yes,
but some states have been paying regularly, even till late, like on those states anyway. We have to give it to them. But whether we are giving it to them or not, the 35,000 naira does not commensurate with what is on ground now. So let us forget about the palliative. And that's why I want to agree with Ajay when he said our minimum should be 1 million naira. Perhaps, and if it's up to that level, Nigerians are in trouble. Nigeria as a nation is in trouble. We have if there's another grammar that is above hyperinflation, Nigeria will experience it. Because every time there's hyperinflation, there will be always crisis. It happened in one country, Hungary. Their money got to a level that to $1 is around 1 quadrillion. In 1946 or so, or 1945 in Hungary. $1 to Hungary dollar naira, their own exchange currency was about 1 quadrillion. Imagine that.
At this point, if we can't talk about the increment of minimum wage, what then do you consider should be the short-term basis, to actually curtail this situation? Because most of the things we've actually been talking about is more like long-term dealing, something that will probably take us a year or two. Yes. What can we do for now?
For now, if governments want to help the situation, for now, 2 things must be done. Number one, fuel subsidy should be reverted.
Do you think they can handle that right now?
I can assure you. Nobody will tell you. We are humans. Take for instance the fuel you are buying 650 today. You now told that is not being sold for 200 naira. Imagine the relief. That's number one. Number two, government must now have a stable and acceptable monetary team that will regulate prices of things in Nigeria. Let me give you an instance. Last week when cement is being sold for 11,000 naira. Immediately, Minister for Works invited all the manufacturers, and they resolved that anywhere they are doing their manufacturing should be sold for 7,000, and depending on the distance, should not be more than 8,000. That is what we call price control. The same, and that's spend the time. What was the excuse? They said there is increment in the prices of raw materials. That was the excuse. So the government should do something to reduce the cost of raw materials, goods and services, and at the same time work on the same manufacturer to ensure that there is compliance with the regulated price.
But I want to come in there. We talk about price control, we have to talk about availability of resources too. We have to talk about productivity. Now, if we are able to do that on cement, I want to believe that it's because it's majorly produced in our country. What about goods that we need in our country, but our production level to meet demand is very low? How do you try to control such prices without still falling back to subsidizing it? Very
brilliant question. Like I said, I used to use, because I've been there, I know what they are doing. In Qatar today, there are some commodities you bring to Qatar that it is tax-free, and there's a name they give to it then, that this import duty payment they make, if it is what they needed most, they don't collect from you, so you only give them the price of sales, and they buy, and they do the same thing back to their citizens, even all inhabitants of Qatar. So they don't collect any dime because they know the importance. Take for instance milk. They know milk consumption is very important. So if you are bringing milk, give it any name, you won't pay anything on it. If government can be doing the same thing, that what Nigeria needs most, let us remove all the payments or all taxes on it. Then there will be relief. That's just to ensure you answer your question. And as I was saying again, at the same time, if government is reducing the price of every commodity and they are bringing back subsidy and they are ready to deal with the evil perpetrators of the first subsidy, I can tell you it will increase our, what we call it, our inputs. Our foreign exchange will come down drastically, because thank God Dangote is going, he has been producing, he has received about 2-3 million barrels of what do you call it, crude oil from Nigeria here. Let him begin to produce. He instruct, give him it all that, because it's our country. You are not selling it for any country now, you are selling to us. We don't want to go abroad to buy again. Give us your price. We thank God we are dealing with Dangote Street, not any other company again. Okay, what is your price? He said there is his own cost is 300 naira per liter. Okay, we pay you 300 naira, sell to them 200 naira, or sell to them 150, so that the Nigeria knows exactly what they are subsidizing. There won't be problem again. And if Dangote is not going to be enough, Bua is about to complete his own refinery. Encourage more refineries to be brought to Nigeria. Encourage what do you call it, establishment of refineries. In another 2-3 years, we have like 10 refineries in Nigeria. The way we are having telecommunication now, we don't have problem with telecommunication. If a price is high, you go for B. If A is high, you go for B. B is high, you go for C. The same thing is applicable to our refineries there. First thing you need to do is that ensure we have more than enough refineries in Nigeria. But tell Nigerians that, please, we are sorry, everything will work well. Let us begin to do it one after the other. Let us mind this price for now. If we have more than enough, nobody will tell us what to buy or what not to buy. By the time we are doing this, I am preferring, I'm trying to give us immediate way forward and long-term way forward about this matter. The first thing we need to do is that for us to live, to get out of this mess, return to subsidy. And make sure you monitor that, so that it is only the fuel we consume we pay for. Not that we pay for 10,000 metric tons and we only get 1,000 metric tons. We have to stop that. That is the major problem we have with subsidy. Once that one is taken care of, immediately begin that every region must have a refinery. Every region. Let's say geopolitical zone should have a refinery to start with. Then let's start working. When Nigeria see it working, they will know that if I try to sabotage my own geopolitical zone and that geopolitical is moving on, nobody will tell you to be active and proactive to ensure you get yours. This is what I introduced to them when I was in the River Rhine, because if anybody is coming to commission to do any project in the River Rhine, the youth will come to us and say, bring us something. But I have to liberate them down. Whatever you are getting will only last for a while. Why can't you say, okay, if you are coming to do any project here, 50% of the people that we work will be from us. Because everybody that is working from that place will hand money. Then number two, when you finish your common project, because it's here, the employee, those people you are going to employ, we must take 40% or 50%. Demand for higher what do you call it, bargain. It will get to a certain level that will suit you. But the truth is that you will get it. And the reason along with me, before you know it, any project you are bringing to that place, that is not their demand.
Now, our time is fast spent. Now, the allocations to most states have been increased, as you earlier stated. Now, it's a good thing that it's coming that way. But now, we have issues of communication and also transparency to the poor masses from the government. What is your take on these, especially in connection with the hardship that we are facing in Nigeria at this moment?
God bless my father, Shegun Obasanjo. When he was in government, everything that goes to every state will be published. This is only to tell lie. If you tell lie, and it is mandatory for the Minister for Finance to publish it in daily news. So it's everywhere. But immediately our last 8 years came, that's why we started secrecy till today. If you want to see any what do you call it, any published financial situation of any current state now, it means like 3 or 4 months after it must have been given to them. So it will no longer serve its purpose. I remember that period, I always have a PDF copy of every money that goes to every state. Before the Ondo state will get theirs, I've already known what we have collected. But today, the reverse is the case. So don't expect this government to make their financial commitment public because they have something to hide. If you don't have something to hide, what's up for making it public? Then number 2, whether you like it or not, there is no way money given to the states will get to the masses. No way. Anywhere in Nigeria, either to the states or to the federation, to the federal government, none will get to the masses. Tell me why? Because we don't have data. If you have accurate biodata of every citizen in Nigeria, to get to them will not be easy. Will be very easy. Today we still have the vulnerables. The vulnerables vulnerable will not be able to have a phone. So how do you trace? A vulnerable will not be able to have a bank account. How do you trace? And these are the people that have made over 40% of Nigerians. And that's why Better could do what she did the other time. Because he believes that there won't be any record. Forgetting that before you can transact from one bank to the other, there must be a record. But these are the ways they have been stealing Nigerian money. And it is endless. The only way we can do that is under, like I said, in the advanced country, the difference between advanced country and Nigeria is that they have a system. We don't have a system here. In Qatar, they know every child, every Qatari by name, by address. They know every every foreigner by name and address. If I do anything as a Nigerian in Qatar, it's a matter of just getting anything about my image. They will locate me wherever I am in Qatar. Can we do that in Nigeria? They say no. Even in America, do any move and run. Before you get to where you are running to, they are already there before you, because they can identify. In Nigeria, we don't have any system. And do you know, not only that we don't have system, we are not working towards getting a system. God bless Nigeria.
Amen. Indeed. Okay, we are really out of time. We feel like we still have a lot to talk about, but I'm very sure we've done a lot of justice to some other topics here. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
It's my pleasure.
All right, viewers, Nigeria is a great nation. Nigeria is our nation. We believe everything will be fine. We hope and believe, we keep praying, but there are a lot of things to be done. A lot of stones needs to be turned. And as our guest has rightly said and stated out, all these things needs to be faced. Transparency, accountability, doing things right, working towards both short-term goals and the long-term goals to make Nigeria that great nation that we all believe it's going to be. From us here, we'll be saying goodbye and we'll be rounding up Daybreak Africa. I remain Michael Obagiri.
In all honesty, the conversation today has been quite humbling for me. I really hope we get to the best of our situations. Now, you do have a wonderful day ahead. I remain Ezekiel Ogar.